You're listening to Radio Primavera Sound, proudly presented by Cupra.
Welcome to Line Noise, and this was one I really enjoyed doing. Well, I really enjoyed doing them all, but it's something that was quite close to my heart, I think. I spoke to Kevin Foakes, a.k.a. Strictly Kev, a.k.a. DJ Food, or part of DJ Food, I'm not quite sure how that works, about the new Telepathic Fish compilation, Trawling the Early 90s Ambient Underground. If you don't know what Telepathic Fish is, it was sort of an ambient party held in London in the early to mid 90s. I used to read about it in Melody Maker and NME, and I always thought, God, it'd be amazing to go. But I never did because I was just a bit too young. And by the time I got to sort of club going age, it had stopped. But this compilation is an absolute gem. I really recommend it. It's got a lot of sort of quite melodic, soft ambient music on. It's not kind of drony type ambient music. It's kind of more the orb kind of thing, not the orb one. Anyway, we cover all of this in the interview. We also speak about the dreaded term chill out, the influence of the orb. Yes, we do. Chatting to Aphex Twin, the spirit of London. We talk about East Dulwich, and we talk about people dancing to ambient DJs. I really hope you enjoy it. Check the interview out. Check the compilation out as well. You will not be sad. Look, I really hope you enjoy it. Line Noise comes to you with the support of Cupra. Thank you. Okay, Kev, there we go. Yeah, perfect. Because we're actually talking about, a long time ago, the early 90s, the excellent compilation, Telepathic Fish, Trawling the Early 90s Ambient Underground, which came out just last month. Telepathic Fish is, I remember reading about it in Melody Maker. I was never quite old enough to go to it. But yeah, I definitely remember reading about it. I mean, can you give us a bit of background on it?
The background to Telepathic Fish is basically myself and three other flatmates who lived in South East London in the early 90s and shared a house, got together and put on some parties which had a dance room and a chill out room. These were quite successful. They were initially in our house, and then we found ourselves more drawn to the chill out room than the dance room, spending more time there. And that then expanded outside to squat parties and clubs. And we basically sort of helped pioneer the chill out room becoming the main room in some, not the main room, but, more than just the small side room, if you like. It was always the side room to the main room, but it became something a little bit more maybe of its own thing. People would come just for the chill out room rather than the main room sometimes.
And the first party was just in your house in East Dulwich, right?
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
So I lived in East Dulwich at the start of the 2000s, and I really can't imagine anyone having like a big party of any kind there. I guess it was quite different back then.
Still, yes. The early 90s East Dulwich, it was, no one went there unless you lived there. There was nothing there. There was a 7-Eleven, some curry houses, some pubs, a charity shop, which is still there on the corner next to where we lived, and not very much else, to be fair. And probably about, if you lived there in the early 2000s, it was just starting to gentrify.
Yes.
And now incredibly gentrified. And, you've got bespoke butchers and, delicatessens and all sorts of things. But back then it was just one of those little suburbs of London,
When you say next to the charity shop, were you on that roundabout, which has...
We were on Goose Green, yes. And there was a charity shop called The Mind Shop on the corner, which is still there.
I've been there, yeah, many a time.
Yeah.
All the same, it seems remarkable that even, in East Dulwich, as was, people didn't kind of object to you having a massive party there.
Well, we were quite lucky. We lived above a shop on the thing. So obviously in the evening and the weekends, the shop, in the evenings, the shop was closed. Next to us was offices. They weren't occupied, especially at the weekends or after hours. And next door neighbours were also college students who came to our parties. So we were fairly okay on the noise front. And being that we were sort of detached from, it was a roundabout outside, and around the back there was some sort of industrial parking before you got to the proper residential houses. So we were reasonably, isolated, and also we were young and naive and didn't think about things like that. More importantly,
I mean, I think in a way, hearing about the story of Telepathic Fish, it does seem quite naive, and I mean that in a good way. Is that fair?
Oh, totally. Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just you're at that age in your early 20s where you look at what other people are doing and you go, I want to do that. I don't necessarily know how to do that or why I'm doing that, but you want to be a part of a scene and part of a movement. Let's say you want to join in, and what do students like to do as well? They like to party, and that was the sort of impetus for it, really. I mean, the first one, there was one party before Telepathic Fish, and that was literally a house party that was way beyond what most house parties are. We properly decorated the house, we did up rooms, we put in lighting, we bought a sound system in, we spent weeks making decor and stuff to make it special, basically. And that was the ethos that we carried on. And as things got bigger, we had to get more stuff in and started collaborating with people and VJs like Matt Black from Cold Cut, who came and VJ'd for us very kindly, and became part of the crew.
Like I said, I remember reading about Telepathic Fish in Melody Maker. I mean, it was covered in sort of music magazines, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've got plenty of press clippings from back in the day. I mean, it wasn't like Mega Dog or Club Dog or anything like that. It was relatively small, and it only really lasted for a few years. But we were just another one of those people on the scene in London, and we did a couple of things outside of London as well, but it was very London centric.
Well, there's something I wanted to ask about. Like, for me, again, not living in London, it did seem like a real product of London. I'm not quite sure why, but I mean, would you agree?
Possibly, although there were other things. There was Oscillate in Birmingham, there was Sonora in Glasgow, and I think those things were just they were like-minded people banding together, doing a local thing. And obviously in London, you've got access to a hell of a lot more people from a potential scene, because there's a lot of artists moved to London. So we were incredibly lucky that Mixmaster Morris, the Irresistible Force, lived up the road, literally up the road from us, and he would come and play our parties, and he knew Matt Black from Cold Cut, so he came down and VJ'd at our parties. And then when one of our guests dropped out for the second party, Morris knew Aphex Twin, who lived in London at that point, and he came down to the party. So we're very lucky to have quite a nice roster of DJs and guest people at our parties. But it was, you were spoilt in London, very much so. But I disagree that it couldn't happen elsewhere, because I know it did.
I mean, could you paint a picture of the first party? What was it like?
The house party or some of the other ones?
The
house party there was a downstairs living room that was quite big. That was the dance room. That had a crazy thing where we did a checkerboard pattern on the ceiling that looked like a classic sort of kitchen floor, and we stuck a bucket and mop in the corner, so that when you came in and looked up, you thought you were upside down in the room. Typical student nonsense. Lots of ultraviolet lights, lots of black light stuff, lots of glow in the dark stuff. I don't know if we had a smoke machine. We probably had a strobe down there as well. And this is, bearing in mind, a sort of vaguely large living room, so it's kind of complete overkill for the room. We had banners, we had stuff hanging from the ceiling, and then upstairs in the chill out room, which was literally above the dance room, so God knows what the bleed was there. But we had mattresses, cushions. We tacked sheets to the ceiling so that you were in some sort of, like some Bedouin tent with fish hanging down via mobiles, and again tons of UV lighting and fluorescent stuff, and videos playing. Like, I don't know if you remember the sort of early computer graphics videos of the day.
Oh yeah.
There was lots of that stuff. The Orb had one, the Future Sound London had one, and Mario, who I lived with, Mario Aguero, one part of the crew, he was very much into that early computer animation. That was one of his things. So there'd be all of that sort of thing playing. You know, it was very low budget, very DIY, very student, but you know, you've got to start somewhere.
So, I mean, Telepathic Fish is often called, and I want to do sort of quote marks here, chill out night.
Yes.
And chill out is not a label I like. I can imagine you're probably not massively keen on it either.
I don't really care, but yeah, go on.
Is it fair as a label to call it that?
It wasn't. It was, in as much as it was the antithesis of dancing. In that the music we were playing we were playing it for people who didn't want to dance and wanted to sit down and chill out. And you know, that didn't mean it didn't have beats. We did play beaty stuff. We played plenty of beaty stuff, but it wasn't. It was more chilled out. It was sort of pre-trip hop things. You know, Andy Weatherall mixes, really dubbed out stuff, as well as, you know, all the classic stuff that you would expect from that era, like the Orb and Future Sound London, the Warp roster, things, Aphex Twin, things like that, you know.
Well, see, that's the interesting thing. You mentioned beats, and listening to the album, Trawling the Early 90s Underground, Ambient Underground, excuse me. There's actually quite a few beats on it. I mean, like the Tranquility bass tune has got some beats on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't averse to it. It wasn't a sort of no beat zone, you know. And that's the thing that I think people forget as well. There's a lot of stuff that was around at that time. We were generally playing new music from the time that we liked and enjoyed, that wasn't maybe the sort of banging techno and rave of the dance floor, because we were contrasting what was happening in the main rooms back then. And so when we would go out raving, there would be a lot of techno, a lot of rave and hardcore techno. And so that was the main room. We weren't playing that stuff. We were playing everything but that stuff, really. But that didn't mean to say that we didn't want to listen to things like Tranquility bass, and things like, you know, Nightmares on Wax and all stuff like that.
I have to say that Tranquility bass tune took me back so much. I think I can't remember the circumstances, but I was out listening to the compilation, and for whatever reason, I couldn't look and see what tune it was. And when that came on, I was like, oh my God, what is, you know, I hadn't heard it in like 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, I knew it so well. It was amazing.
It was huge at the time. I mean, you couldn't go to a party without hearing that track, which was another reason why we put it on, because I do feel that things like that have kind of got lost a little bit over time. And especially when you think of chill out, you don't think of something like that. You know, and that was why we wanted to put stuff like that on. And also things like the Nightmares on Wax tune, Night's Interlude, which has become, you know, it's been a bit of a sort of Ibiza chill out classic since, but we were playing that way before, and, you know, way before George even did, you know, the sort of second record and stuff like that. And I remember thinking, playing that, oh, I wonder if this will go over. Is it a little bit too upbeat? It's not upbeat at all, but, you know, compared to some of the floaty stuff we were playing, it was slightly different, rhythmic.
Did people dance?
I don't remember. I mean, maybe they did. Some people did. Some people might have swayed and, you know, had their moment, but, you know, there was no policy. It wasn't like, don't dance. You know, we did a launch party a month ago for it, and some people sort of swayed about and did their thing, and that was their way of getting into the music. Some people sat, some people stood, some people, actually one person went to sleep for a bit. One guy bought a deck chair and just sat there by the speaker telling people just to hush because he just wanted to listen to the music, you know.
Did you bring in some mattresses from the street just to mark the occasion?
Not this time, no, we learned our lesson there, but, you know, that was just needs must at the time.
Because I think this is the reason that I find the term chill out quite annoying, because I think it's sometimes a lot of the things people use for chill out are quite bland, and the music that you have on this compilation is anything but bland, right?
I'd like to think so, yeah.
No, definitely. Well, in my opinion, yeah, no.
Yeah, but no musicians like are being pigeonholed or no, scenes that are named by journalists, aren't they? Generally, they're not named by the artists that are part of that scene, and no one likes it. Jazz musicians hated the term jazz. Hip hoppers, trip hop. Everyone hates the term trip hop. Just because it makes them think of a particular thing. I personally love trip hop music, but there's a particular type of trip hop music I like more than, let's say, the obvious mainstays that get dragged out every time you hear the word or see them on a compilation. I think it's far deeper than that. But what were we talking about?
Blandness and things not being bland or being bland, I think.
Well, ambient has suffered from that over time, in that it's there've been a million chill out compilations, and maybe some of them are bland. I don't know. I don't really personally, buy them and stuff. I listen to all sorts of music, and the original definition of ambient, in Eno's definition was music that can be listened to or not. It can just exist in the background like wallpaper almost. And you could argue that was bland. I don't know if it is. Maybe it serves a function.
Well, see, I find this interesting. This is one reason I really love the compilation, because for me, I loved music for airports and early The Orb and KLF Chill Out and things like that. But I don't listen to a lot of things that are called ambient these days. That might be my problem. I don't know. But I think I find a lot of it is maybe not melodic enough, or maybe a bit too. I don't know. I don't particularly want to listen to a drone for half an hour. It has its place, but not really for me. I really like things that have melody, I guess.
I think drones in a live context are far more effective and affecting than maybe at home. I wouldn't necessarily listen to drone stuff at home, but seeing it performed in a live scenario in a loud, environment is actually quite interesting for me. But the melody is one of the key things in someone's selection of what we picked for the compilation, in that there were quite a lot of tracks that gave us all goosebumps when we listened to them because of the melodies. That pretty much when the space-time continuum fluorescence track starts, I kind of melt a bit. It's just that synth pad, and obviously there's an element of nostalgia there as well, but it's the same with the global communication. There's bits where these melodic pads drift in, or David Morley's mix of Golden Girls Kinetic, and they're just gorgeous, and they're highly melodic. And you're absolutely right. That is a key component to a lot of it for me. Sure.
Were you DJing that right from the beginning?
Yeah. Well, Telepathic Fish is a sort of construct of me and my friends. When you say it was it was just the parties that we put on were titled that. So it was all of us, and I was one of the main DJs with Mario and Chantel Passamonte.
I mean, so how did you pick records for it? Was there a lot of sort of trial and error, or did you develop a sense of this is going to work quite quickly?
It was just what we were listening to. A lot of the records we played were contemporary releases. There was, it's a 90s as a decade is a golden age of music, no doubt, especially in what you would call dance music, electronic music, and all that sort of thing. And there was a limit to what we could afford because we were poor students, but also there was a lot that we were learning as well from people like Mixmaster Morris, who was completely up on this world and very, very graciously hipped us to a lot of acts that we'd never heard of, and played us a lot of music. We were avid fans and of all these things. And Morris at the time was just this whirlwind of sort of information, and a brilliant DJ to boot. And the whole time we just be going, what's that, and he sort of introduced us to labels, artists, got us on promo lists, introduced us to people. He knew everybody, and it was a learning thing, really. And we got what we could. We started this fanzine Mind Food after a little while, and that meant that people would start sending us stuff too. So we would get the first records by Seafield before they were signed to Warp and things like that, and we'd get stuff sent through, and we started to get on mailing lists and things like that. And then we ended up working in a record shop, Ambient Soho, some of us, and there was a main line to new music there then.
Why did you want to do a fanzine?
I don't know. I can't even remember whose idea it was. I think it was Chantel's idea, because she was hyper connected and she knew lots of journalists and promoters, and she said, "Oh, we should do this thing. There's lots of stuff happening. We can sell it through the shop, and I know this person can write that person, and I know this band." And we just did it. Some of us were art students, and we had the ability to design it, and thought we knew how to get it printed and stuff. And then you just did everything. Let's do we didn't do a record label or anything, but we did a party. You did parties, and we did we did banners, and we did club decor, and we did computer graphics and design, record sleeve design. We're just doing stuff. Telepathic Fish started in my sort of third year at Camberwell College, so I was super busy with that, but we still had access to facilities, some of which we used to literally make and design the flyers. And by the time we'd left, we'd bought a little computer and started to learn how to use it. And it was that, it's the classic DIY thing. We thought we can do this, even though we weren't particularly good at some of it. Look at some of the fanzine stuff, especially the early issues. It looks terrible, but we were just learning.
Does it exist anywhere, like the content?
Not digitally, no, but I have got some copies left, which I'm selling at a fanzine fair up in Manchester called Bound at the end of the month, which we sold some at the party as well, at the launch party, but they got absolutely snapped up. £10 a pop, and I was saying I think that's too much, because we used to sell them for £1. And of course now they're 30 years old, they're little artifacts, and they just went immediately. And I said, yeah, maybe we could have sold them for more, but
I've seen some people connecting what you did to what the Orb were doing at the Land of Oz, the chill out room there, which was a couple of years earlier, I think.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Do you see a connection?
That kind of thing inspired us. We never went to Land of Oz, but we heard about it, and we wanted to do something like that, because it had finished by that point, and no one else was really doing it. Not that we knew. There were other people doing similar things, but we never came in contact with them. There was the reflective parties in London, which we weren't kind of connected to them at that point, so we didn't go to any of those. But we really wanted to. We'd heard about this because we loved the Orb. They were a huge band for all of us, and we just thought, why don't we do that? It sounds really cool. But it was almost like we were trying to do our version without ever having been there, and what we would imagined it would have been like. And it probably was nothing like that at all. From what I've since learned is that it was an upstairs room with a lot of turntables and Alex, Jimmy, and Youth at times, different times, just playing. I don't know to how many people. I don't know what the decor was. There was some projection, and that's what we wanted to do. Similar things.
Wasn't it a VIP room or something?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah,
I believe so.
Doesn't seem entirely.
Well, I think you could go in there. I think other people can go in there, but it would have been the VIP room on a normal night.
Right.
As I understand it. I was talking to somebody the other day who used to do projections there and stuff, and just rig up stuff for them. And I know Alex now as well, so I've talked to him a bit about it. Alex Patterson from the Orb.
Yeah. When did you do the last party?
The last party was, I think, at the very end of 1995, and I think it was at Heaven, and it was a collaboration with at the time, new label called Clear, and it was called Clearly Telepathic. And Clear was a sort of electro label that started in the mid-90s, sort of with a seeming aim to sort of resurrect the electro sound, which the label were massive fans of. But they were using people like Jedi Knights, Mike Paradinas, Plaid, Orteca, Matthew Herbert, and they had this great roster of sort of contemporary electronic musicians doing sort of electro tracks for them, and it was all very, very considered, and they had lots of sort of like tag lettering inspired by some of the Mowak stuff for their sleeves, and you know, that was a great label, and we were good friends with them, and so we did a sort of joint party. And by that point, things were moving on. You know, music was moving on. We were moving on. Chantel had moved to Sheffield to become Warp's press officer. I was heavily involved with Ninja Tune at that point under the sort of DJ Food banner with Coca, and was designing records for them, record sleeves. And basically, you know, allies were drifting apart. Music was drifting apart, and you know, that was kind of the end of that, really, because we all moved into different areas. Mario was designing computer games sort of full time and stuff, and David was designing and doing all sorts of decor and working at Ambient Soho full time. So yeah.
So how did the compilation come about?
That was Doug Shipton from Fundamental Frequencies, who used to be part of the Finders Keepers label. I'd known Doug for years, you know, just on the record collecting circuit, DJing circuit. I bought Finders Keepers records for years, and a friend of his he was working with had been to one of the Telepathic Fish parties and was raving about it, and he sort of knew about it, but he didn't realize I was part of it until I can't remember how he found out, but he just contacted me one day and said, "Oh, I didn't know you were part of this Telepathic Fish thing. You know, would you be up for doing a compilation themed around the parties?" And I said, "Yeah, of course, as long as the others are involved." And we got together, had a meeting, and I bought my sort of big scrapbook of old flyers and press cuttings and memorabilia in, and he immediately just said, "Oh yeah, we've got bags of stuff here," because that was another reason he wanted to know if there was any sort of visual backup to what we could select as a music, because the idea was to build a story. We didn't really have to build a story, we just had to tell the story, because there was plenty to tell. And you know, and then just decide how to present it and what we could, well, deciding what we would put on the comp was really, really difficult, because there was over 100 tracks in consideration, you know.
I was going to ask, did you all just come in with your favorites and then, you know?
Basically, yeah. We put together a sort of list. There's a big Excel document somewhere with all these tracks with links on it, and then we all put in our favorites, and then had a sort of blind marking of like a B or C track. Like A list was, you know, we all, if we're all three of us liked it, it was an A list, and that went on the thing, and all of those tracks on that comp are A list tracks, basically, from our choice.
For you personally, what was the one song that you were like, no, this has to go on?
Very difficult. I think the Kiichi Suzuki remix of Satellite Serenade is an absolutely incredible piece of music, and it was really difficult to license. We had to go to Universal Japan for that. It took the longest, but it was worth it. Also, the Barbarella remix by Mixmaster Morris that kicks off the album. You know, we had to have a Mixmaster Morris track of some description on it, but we wanted something that was quite personal, and that mix always for us stood right out. So yeah, those two I would go to.
And you got the Caustic Window track, Aphex Twin.
Yes.
Which I was going to say would probably be quite difficult, but then you've got connections, right?
Well, we've got connections with Warp. Yeah. You know, Richard played at the party, one of the parties back in the day. And yeah, we would have, you know, one of his tracks was Key, but we didn't want it to be something obvious. I don't think there's been a Caustic Window track licensed before to a comp. Not for a long, you know, many years, temporary. So yeah, that was another one that took a long time to negotiate, but we got it.
This maybe you've just answered with Strictly Serenade, but I was wondering if there was one song that basically sums up the Satellite Serenade, excuse me, that really sums up the parties for you.
Oh, you know what it is? It's not on there, but it's the global communication track. it's just the timing on the album, isn't it? It's like 14, what is it, 1413 or something? It used to be called Obsilon Minos, and it was a communications mix of one of their other pseudonyms that was on Evolution 6, and it's the one with the clock ticking all the way through it. Basically, that's the clock ticking song. A lot of people know it as, but the official title is now 14 something. That track was played every party, sometimes twice or three times by every DJ at that time. When even non-Telepathic Fish parties, chill out rooms in general, that was guaranteed to get played at some point in the night, and it got played to death, literally, like to the point where you'd hear the clock coming in, you go, oh, not this again, after a while, and that the next 14 minutes, as they're brilliant. And I've actually started playing it again. I played it at the launch party, but I mixed loads of stuff into it to sort of almost revive it and put my own spin on it, because I've heard it so many times. But that is a classic that I'd always think of to do with the parties.
If I may ask, why isn't it on there? I mean, there's another global communication track, Incidental Harmony.
Again, yes. Global Communication are just that group with all of us. It's like we will play their stuff or remixes by them to the end of time. Honestly, they're just classic. Again, we didn't want to have the most obvious thing,
right?
There is a time constraint as well, consideration with vinyl, because you can only fit so much on each side. And when you've got a 14-minute track, we could have done this whole comp with 4 tracks, 20 minutes each side, because that's another thing about a lot of this ambient music from back then, is it was really long, and you'd get side long pieces like Dreamfish, a lot of the Fax label stuff, which would last 20 minutes. And that's not going to be a very exciting compilation. It was a very difficult balance, actually, trying to find tracks that would be listenable. Tracks were a bit longer back then. There was 6-7 minutes, as a standard, and you start juggling timings on vinyl to get a good cut and a good volume on things. Which is why things like the No Man track at the end of side 1 is quite a little short 2-minute track, and the Nightmares on Wax Nights interlude tracks, they're quite short tracks, so they're perfect to kind of fill up the side.
We talked earlier, you mentioned Megatripolis as a kind of kindred spirit. I think you said the Big Chill as well.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
How about the Megdog people? I always saw a connection there, and I always really liked Megadog. Did you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We went to Club Dog, we went to Megadog. They were the raves, though. For us, they were the clubbing. There was always a chill out element to Megdog as well. That remember the first time I met Aphex Twin was listening to Mixmaster Morris DJ at the Brixton Academy, and there was an upstairs chill out room on the balcony, and just sat down, and Aphex was there, so I had a quick chat with him about where'd you get your records from, that sort of thing. But yeah, for us, we would go to Megadog clubbing and go to Club Dog as well, even earlier, and all those people. But there was definitely crossover, absolutely. Definitely.
It's funny because I sometimes wonder if like Megadog gets its dues these days.
Not yet. I think it's coming. It has to be. I think a lot of this stuff is coming back round, and people are starting to remember all these things. And there's so many other places. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, there was Sonora in Glasgow, there was Oscillate in Birmingham, there was things like the Ambient Club was running in North London, pretty much in parallel to what we did, and that was Stuart Warren Hill and Pod of SP Visuals. And Stuart Warren Hill later went on to become Hexstatic and did Timber with Cold Cut, and Matt Black knew him. Matt Black knew Pete Lawrence and Katerina from Big Chill early on, and he was involved with them. Matt from Cold Cut had his fingers in so many pies because he was into the audiovisual side of things, and a lot of these places were very audiovisual. You're sitting down and you kind of want something to look at. Not to say you want to go and watch TV or anything like that, but there's that side of it always. If you're just sitting in a cold dark room, it's not that relaxing.
You did a launch party. Did that sort of make you think, I could do this again sometime?
It did, and we will. But we've just I've got to have a bit of a break from it for the minute, because I've been doing this compilation for over a year actually, and it's kind of consumed my life for quite a lot of it. And we'd really like to do festivals actually next year. We'd really like to do chill out tents and things like that. Actually go to different places and take it out of London, and just bring what we do into the sort of contemporary landscape a little bit. And not to say that it's got to be a retro thing either, and we'd only be playing chill out music from the 90s. I've listened to, and play plenty of contemporary electronica that I would consider ambient. So there's definitely scope for, well, I mean, there's decades worth of music between then and now. And plus going back to the 70s, things like that.
I'm interested in that. Like, if you were to do something, next summer or whatever, what kind of modern things have you heard that make you think, yeah, that would really work?
Oh God. I just heard a brilliant 12-inch last month. Marshall Jefferson has got this new track out on Utter. Do you know Utter? Alex Egan's label?
No, I don't know I do.
Utter specializes in putting out usually just one-off releases by very odd and esoteric acts. Mm-hmm. I've had a thing out on there under the name Celestial Mechanic, which is a soundtrack to a book, and he usually likes to do things that are audio-visual. They have a link to something else. Marshall Jefferson remade an old track of his into I think it was like 36-minute meditational workout with a sort of voiceover for a form of Tai Chi meditation. And it's called, what's it called? It's something like it's yellow music. It's all revolves around the color yellow for meditation or something like that. It's called. And I think they've cut it down to 24 minutes. There's a remix by a guy called Joaquin, and that's 18 minutes. There's a vertical mix, which is slightly more dancey, and there's a horizontal mix, which is very chill out. And they've all got these sort of meditational vocals over it, but there's an instrumental mix without the vocals, which is even better. And it literally just sounds like something that could have been from the 90s, a sort of arpeggiated, synthesized chill out thing, and 18 minutes long. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that.
I'm going to be listening to it as soon as.
Seriously, check it out. It's most of it's available digitally. There is a 12-inch, but they, just time constraints with vinyl. Have a listen to it. Marshall Jefferson on Utter.
A few more things, if I may. Like, I haven't lived in London for very, very many years, and I don't know. Obviously, I didn't live in London in the 90s either when this was happening, but. So maybe this is quite ignorant, but anyway, it just made me wonder if, like, you think this kind of thing could happen in London of 2025, like, putting on a party like this and kind of growing out of there and very DIY and.
Oh God, yeah, easily. I mean, there's two sides to this. There's people of our age. I mean, I'm slightly older than you, I'd imagine, but the equivalent these days for us is listening bars. It's very refined. It's more high end. It's about the sound. It's about it's quite a middle class thing. You're going to a bar. It's nice. It's vinyl generally and things like that. But you've also got the underground or whatever the equivalent of the contemporary counterculture is today. And I'm not going to pretend to be plugged into that because I'm 55. I'm not a 20-year-old or something, but my kids are, and they go out to all sorts of different things, and there's all sorts of different things happening, and I hear about stuff that's happening that's completely outside of my knowledge and sphere, because it's just not for me. You can do so much, and anyone that says that the counterculture is dead is just not looking properly. You've got the ability and the knowledge via the web and mobile phones these days to communicate and get messages out. And sometimes these events are just like 2 hours long. People will congregate and have a rave in a tunnel for 2 hours until the police come, and then then they'll disperse, and that's all they need. And people are building a different kind of experience based on the times and the technology that they're living in, and that our parties were a response to the times and the technology and the facilities that we had. I'm not comparing sort of like 2-hour pop-up raves to ambient things that went on all night, but I'm sure this could happen. You've got people like Max Richter doing performances of sleep overnight in museums. I mean, if that isn't chilling out, I don't know what is. And in some ways, maybe what we did back in the day has led to the proliferation of things like that. But maybe some of the people that are running these institutions now went to these parties back in the day. Not necessarily ours, maybe, but they come from that generation.
Do your kids like their compilation?
I don't think they've heard of it. They like the stories about Telepathic Fish. They really like that, and they were trying to pick my brains about how to set up a club or a night or something like that, and I had to let them know that they'd probably in this day and age be breaking the law, because we used to get into squats, and that isn't really happening these days. And have you thought about a bar, and have you thought about security and things that we didn't even think about back then, but it was okay, luckily.
Look, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. Last kind of thing, away from the compilation, you've always got many things going on. What else have you got that you can tell us about?
What have I got at the moment that I can talk to you about? The reason I had to cancel the interview yesterday is I went to the lockup of Universal's archive out in West London. I've just finished taking part in a massive reissue project for Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the 80s pop band, who've got huge Welcome to the Pleasure Dome 40th anniversary box set coming out next month, the end of this month, actually. We went to the archive to look through the biggest collection of Frankie Goes to Hollywood memorabilia I've ever seen in my life, which was just quite daunting. So there's that. There is, I'm finishing a collage comic, which I've been working on for 5 years, which I'm going to be selling up at the Design Fair in Manchester, along with the Mind Foods. And I'm starting an audio project, actually finishing an audio project that's, again, been years in the making with the Matt Johnson's band.
Oh, nice.
That's got to be done by Christmas. That's going to come out on his label. And it's a kind of, you mentioned Chill Out by the KLF before. Imagine a version of the Chill Out album, but all the music, but really obscure the B-sides and soundtrack work, and all stripped down to various stems and things, and overlaid and interwoven into a kind of sonic soundscape.
Sounds amazing.
It's sounding pretty good at the moment. Yeah, I have to say. I've got to finish that and do some artwork for that, and write some stuff for the booklet, because it's coming out on CD on Matt's label.
Well, thank you with all that. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ben.
Congratulations again on the compilation, which I've been listening to absolutely loads and has been taking me into a better place.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much then.
Cheers, Ben.
Cheers, then. Bye.
You're listening to Radio Primavera Sound, proudly presented by Cupra.